Okay, welcome. So this will be the first recorded video. I've done a long rant that is my own big picture overview of all the strategies and tools and everything you need to survive in a free and sane way. This is on the tool level. It does include a bit about the future and what kind of strategy you should have. I've been in Linux since '98, so this will be my take on Linux as of today. A lot of this goes from memory. And some of this is an update for myself, so it is kind of a live update. Okay. Oh, here we go. So Linux is something that most people know. They know the word and they know about its existence. Many people know that it is powering a huge part of the web. But what is it? Well, it's open source software. It's the most widely known open source software. What is open source? Open source is basically code that everyone can revise and review and alter. All of the code that is running on the hardware. So let's see what this tainted source that is called Wikipedia is saying. So yeah, a family of operating system. Linux is a family of operating systems. It is, you can have many type of different distros, and I got started on SUSE Linux in '98. I did run Red Hat for quite a while. I've been doing servers on Ubuntu a lot. I've been using Linux Mint the past few years as my desktop laptop go-to thing. I've been using Linux within Cube's OS, which is a hardcore privacy virtualization environment. Linux is an operating system that can replace Windows and OS X for your MacBook or whatever. There was this long debate in the '90s. I remember compiling kernels to get a laptop going. I remember working with USB libraries to get a printer working. And I remember when I did a degree in London, I remember ditching Linux as my operating system and using OS X first version, second version. I got started on OS X, Mac OS in 2000, and I needed to be on that for 3 years because I needed to be productive. I was going to do a degree, and I basically couldn't be hassled with like fighting with a USB port to get my printer running when I needed to print some paperwork for an assignment. But now it is definitely, it's ready for prime time. I can do my video production on Linux instead of using OS X. I've been running a video production agency / photography agency some years before 2020, and we were completely dependent on iMacs. This iMac belonged to that company. It's expensive gear. I don't want to be dependent on this kind of expensive gear any longer. It's still running OS X. It's still practical for me to have access to it, and I need to keep a tab on OS X because I want to be support and I want to provide support for people. But I could easily run it on Linux, and I'm gonna install a second partition with Linux Mint on it. Probably gonna do that kind of live. But it all comes from the Linux kernel. I remember when getting started, That was in the autumn '98, and I tried to install it via disks, and I had a coworker who wanted me to compile it compile the kernel and build it from scratch. I was not up to it then, but then I got a Linux magazine with a CD, and the SUSE Linux installed worked on an old PC that I got. So I got X started, which is the screen display manager that all of you Linux used to run on. And I got Tom's Windows Manager, which is like an 80s Windows Manager going. So that's why I count that as when I got started. And in '99 I got onto Red Hat, and then later I got onto running VMware virtualization on Red Hat. But it all revolves around the kernel, and the news in the '90s was about Torvald Linux running a kernel, and you always started with the kernel, and I compiled the kernel to get my laptop working at some point before I gave in and started doing my desktop work, my laptop work on OS X, which also needed tweaking in the beginning to get it running instead of using the earlier Mac OS system. So I'm going to go to the operating system kernel now. A kernel is just the executive layer. It's the suite, or the one monolithic kernel, or it's a suite of a collection of code that is running between all of your software and the hardware. It's like you call it like the cerebral cortex, or whatever you call it, like this like the deepest level of your brain, where like if that gets taken out, nothing works and you're dead. If the kernel fails, it fails. Everything fails. Computer freezes or just dies. It's your central, your central hub for the code. You can see it that way. Technical people who might listen to this might not agree with the words, but I want to teach things in a very easy way to understand, because this is how you need to view it in practical ways to get started. And I'm going to do a jump here, because the kernel is still intact. The kernel can handle almost any kind of hardware, any software. The Linux kernel is running the world. The Linux kernel is even running all of the surveillance platforms and all of the server farms that is building this digital gulag. The Linux kernel is running almost all of the Bitcoin nodes and Monero nodes. And well, in Monero, maybe a lot of people are running a daemon on their Windows installation and things like that. But Linux is running the world. So I'm going to do a jump now between the technical part of it and the civilizational, the trend part, the forecast part, and the strategy part. Because the kernel is still curated. It is open source. There are people contributing to the open source, but someone has to be the one who pulls the trigger on releasing a new version. Deciding what kind of contributions should be included in the kernel or not, and that is Linus Torvalds, the guy who built the kernel from scratch in the '90s. Well, he took Minix and he took some, I can't remember the details. It was not completely from scratch, but as a project, it was basically starting from scratch and being very ambitious about building a new open source operating system for the world, and that has been a huge success. So I'll include these links. I'll include these links in the notes here. Let's go to the history. there's some previous history here on Amiga. I remember that. This is what I mean about. This is the thing I'm seeing as a big picture tendency, because there was a controversy, so-called controversy around the kernel some years ago, and this is Wikipedia, so it's a tainted source, and I'm looking for signs, nefarious signs for the wrong type of people messing with the open source project that Linux is. And I haven't done this. This is live. So it is a demonstration of how to work with reality and what to expect and how to watch for trends, because I don't see Linus Torvalds' name here as in a prominent way, which is what should be the case and used to be the case, and he used to be the soul, the guy. And let's see if his name is less prominently placed in. I should delete this, but there's a point to this. Find in page. This is years since I've checked Linux on Wikipedia, but I think I remember that his name was in the first paragraphs, as it should be. So let's go to the page for Linus Torvalds now. See what Wikipedia says. He is still the one who is curating the code, but let's see what the Linux connection is now described as. Initially, Torvalds wanted to call the kernel developed freaks, blah blah, indicated it was a Unix system, but yeah, well, it's the name about it. As of 2006, 2% of the Linux code was written by Torvalds. Despite the thousands who have contributed to it, his percentage is still one of the largest. Well, 2% is not much. It's less now. However, he said in 2012 that his own personal contribution is now mostly merging code written by others with little programming. This is the very vital curation function. He retains the highest authority to decide which new code is incorporated into the standard Linux kernel. Let's now search for Linus Torvalds controversy. Anyone who is doing stellar work in a pure meritocracy needs to be 100% focused on the actual work and the quality and security and all aspects of the project itself. And here we go. Blah, blah, blah. Yeah. Has apologized for years of rants, swearing, and general hostility directed at other Linux developers. This is not meritocracy. This is not something you can build a civilization on. He's not allowed to be himself. Okay, but saying he's going to take a temporary break from his role as maintainer of the open source kernel to learn how to behave better. Pure communism. So this is something I'm watching. Can I even say this? Will this channel be deleted before it even goes anywhere? NewYorker.com, after years of abusive emails, the creator of Linux steps aside. Well, did he step aside? This is fuzzy. Now we come to itsforce.com, and there is a different take on it, because the open source community is still strong. Now we come to Linux has a code of conduct, and not everyone is happy with it. So, well, there's two sides to the problem now here, at least. I'll include that. This is from 2023. It says here that why would I even read code of conduct? I know how to behave in a sane world. I've based the past few years on not getting involved in anything that has a code of conduct. Linux Kernel has a new code of conduct. Linux took a break from Linux kernel development just 30 minutes after signing this code of conduct. Well, was that done under duress or not? And since the writer of this code of conduct had a controversial past, there was someone building the backbone of the modern internet. Of course, there's going to be controversial past. Point of heated discussion. I see signs all over the place. I've seen a sign pointing in this direction years ago when I was doing a lot of open source networking and conferences. I built one project. It ended up with a company and a trademark from another country, but I built a couple of iterations of my own tiny startup on open source. I spent a year working my way into open source, and then I spent a year getting that seed funding. And I met people who were like firebrands that were like driving the open source community and were driving the application of the open source community, contributing a lot. Then I saw these people live. I saw it on the ground. That these people were taken down and forced to blah blah apologize, and I've seen people's careers and names being taken down after contributing a lot for no good reason. Yeah, again, this communist. And I've seen these people having no recourse, just kind of leaving. So this will ultimately, if this takes over, it will ultimately destroy open source. It will destroy open source projects. Very solid open source projects like Linux or Bitcoin can withstand something like this for a while, because they are, especially with like Linux and like things like web servers, Apache, and it's just too big to completely undermine in a short period of time. But ultimately, it can be taken over. I haven't got any particular like this there won't be like one sign, like one red flag, like now it's taken over. There's all of these small, tiny ones. And I see the danger of the Linux kernel, and by extension, all Linux distribution. Like I'm looking into compiling a kernel again, because then I might be able to at least minimize the damage to like to like not compile a lot of the things that I suspect might be coming with backdoors or whatever. I've been running some BSD. I've been trying out BSD. I can get my main work done on BSD if I need to. I'll probably do some video of that. I'll be happy to try to do some support for people getting onto that, because it is a tiny community. The whole architecture is different, so it will be resilient for longer. The cubes community seems to be very different, so maybe there is a refuge there. But ultimately, the Linux kernel is kind of being surrounded by this, and the resources of corporations will kind of suck it up slowly. Bitcoin is definitely under this kind of attack. How is the Monero community doing this? I don't know. I haven't checked it. I'm going to check it. But it's a totally different type of person that is. The whole community the whole culture is totally different. I don't know if Monero has a code of conduct. I think most people who use it and contribute to Monero won't even check it, like me, because you don't need a code of conduct if you're a gang of people who are building something sane in a collaborative way where freedom is the key. So this is the state of the world as it is now. This old laptop. This is I think it's 2011. Let me find a studio thing here. I think this laptop is 2011. I think it's definitely old. It's like got 2 gigs RAM. How do I? Yeah, okay, here we go. I gave up running OS X on it. I bought it for nothing 3 years ago. My point is, I'm running Linux Mint on this. I think I have a good grasp on the security and viability of my devices, because I've been doing this thing since, well, even back to the 80s. So I feel pretty certain that I have a right take on this device, and it's a good example. It's running Linux Mint. I don't think there are any like active backdoors or really compromised elements in this kernel. I do think I can run it for a bit longer. I do feel that next up I should get into maybe compiling a kernel on this device just to test it out. But ultimately I'll be using this as my travel or like light work load laptop for as long as I can, and I'll be okay with it. I'll be updating Linux, I'll be running malware browser, I will be running Brave browser and malware VPN, and I'll feel fine about it. I'll do some basic things like basic hardware wallets on Bitcoin and Monero, and I'll be very surprised if it is compromised or hijacked in any way, because I have the right routines after all of these years to keep these things running, and I have the right routines of surveilling in a big picture general way what's going on with the different open source projects that I use and build anything new on. But 2 or 3 years down the line, 5 years down the line, I don't think I'm going to be using this. I don't think I'm going to be having the same take on it. I think I will have further evidence. I think people out there in general will know that the Linux kernel and all projects will be hijacked to a certain degree. I think knowledge about how these surveillance, the corporate forces and the surveillance apparatus, this kind of fascistic combination that is creating this digital gulag around us, has a way of operating that will be more known. So people will be watching for these signs, and there will be a deeper knowledge about how these things work. So it will also be met with with counter movements. Maybe there will be a fork of the Linux kernel. Maybe that is kind of impractical now. Maybe there will be a resurgence of some of the alternatives, like the BSD flavors. And I do hope Cubes OS will be doing well. I've stopped using Cubes because I can use it as a creator. I can use it to publish anything. I'm probably one of the few photographers in the world that's been trying to use Cubes consistently, but it's not capable of I can't set up a very effective workflow on that. I also can't set up a very effective workflow on a BSD flavor. So this is the state of the Linux. This is a little bit about the Linux kernel, how I watch for these kind of civilizational, cultural developments that affect the tool that is the Linux kernel for me. And in time, I'll go back and I'll point to this as the Linux kernel of today, like the open source. A take on open source with Linux kernel in as a focus on this date. And I think I'm going to be right about these general predictions. And I hope I can be helpful in making people prepare and raising awareness about these things. And I do certainly hope that we'll get back to a climate where someone is not taken down because they are the best. This is what happened. Linus Torvalds was undisputed, sometimes abrasive, or whatever you call it, king in the kingdom of meritocratic contributions, which is open source, and this DEI or this political correctness or this sleazebag thinking change that setup, and it's something that is essential to watch very closely, because I've said this on some other project, some other channel, that it's all about creating luck, and you can't have. I would rather use Linux Windows unaltered with all kind of surveillance than thinking that I want a completely secure platform and be stupid about things. Like, obviously, all of this is 100% out in the open. Most things I've ever said and done can always be out in the open anyway. But you need tools where you have some kind of privacy and security online, and you need to know the state of those tools, and you need to know how the forces that try to control all of humanity operate, trying to get their totalitarian power in this setting. So far it still looks good, but to create luck, to create the lucky circumstances for building anything in the future, you need to be able to act and speak freely online. And yeah, that's why I'm here. That's why I'm doing this. This is why I'm saying these things. Okay, that's it. Good luck.